Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you don't know, my name is Dale Yoakum. I'm the head coach of Team 1540, Flaming Chickens. And one of the things that we've been doing a lot of over the years are things that aren't a robot. First, keep saying, well, it's not about the robot, not about the robot, yet for many teams, it's still about the robot. And a lot of us are trying to break out of that mold. 1540's been doing a lot of projects that are engineering related, not just community service, but actually using our engineering skills to make a difference in the world over the years. And it's one of the reasons why we've been able to attract a lot of students that aren't traditional engineering of competition robot. About 40% of our team are girls right now, and there's probably about the team isn't really about building competition robots, it's about doing all this other work in the community. So one of the problems, though, with trying to do these kinds of projects is finding a problem to solve. It's not that easy to just kind of sit back in your chair and imagine, gee, I wonder what problem is out there that I could solve, that I have the skills to solve, and that will make a difference in the world. And so LEAP is our way of trying to address that problem. So LEAP is a way of kind of dipping your toe into the world of doing projects that aren't about the robot. And so we go out, we find a nonprofit that is interested in getting our help. We work with that nonprofit to develop a competition framework, if you will, around that problem, and then move it forward and roll it out to teams. So right now, most of the teams that are interested in doing this, I think, are joining us online, but you guys are here. That means you get the competitive advantage of being able to ask them questions. So that's a good thing. The nonprofit that raised their hand first this year was OMSI. OMSI has been fantastic about supporting these kinds of things in the past. This year they have a real problem that actually needs our help, as opposed to it just kind of being a faked up problem that we're trying to solve. So they're going to tell you a lot more about that later. So here's the way this is going to work. The kickoff is happening now. And then for the next week, you're going to be able to work in your own spaces on coming up with a solution for this problem. Then on the 29th, which is a week from tomorrow, we'll all reconvene at OMSI and be able to pitch our solutions. So the way it works, the doors are going to open at 4 o'clock. At 4:30, teams will be assigned a speaking order. We may actually just be grabbing it out of a hat. And then 4:45, we'll have intros from the judges. You'll find out who the judges are, maybe be able to psych out a little bit about what they're interested in. But there's going to be people from OMSI, people from Autodesk, and people that are in that same space there. Then at 5 o'clock promptly, teams will have 5 minutes to deliver their pitch. If you've seen Shark Tank on TV, this is kind of like that. If you've never seen Shark Tank, go Google Shark Tank and see what those pitches are like. But you've got 5 minutes to make your case as to why your solution ought to be considered as one of the final contenders. There's no Q&A, so 5 minutes, you're in, you're out. You can bring whatever slides, whatever props, whatever you want to bring. The judges will then have the unenviable job of trying to pick from those some finalists. We're not going to constrain them to how many finalists they choose, but expect it to be, in the 4 to 6 range, something like that. And those teams will come back and do a second round. And the second round, they'll have up to 5 minutes if they want to say anything more and then respond to Q&A. Or they can just leave their whole 10 minutes to the judges to ask them questions. And then the judges will go off and get to deliberate. In either of these blanks, like after the first round or after the second round, the judges may come to your pit area, booth area, and want to ask you some more questions or see any models that you might have developed or any CADs or whatever. No matter what, if you're doing any CADs of your design, then you'll want to bring those on a flash drive to be able to share with the judges. But you also probably want to have it on a laptop that is available to show in your booth area. So the judges are going to work and work and work, and then the winners will be announced at, I don't know, we're guessing 8:30. We don't know how long this is going to go because, it'll depend on how many teams and so on. The first prize of this is $4,000. That goes towards your first registration. Second place is $2,000. Third place is $1,000. After that, it's a hearty thank you. Because these ideas are all going into the mix that OMSI is going to use to help plan their future direction. And they'll talk more about that later. Things to bring. You want to be wearing your FRC shirts because you want to be recognizable to the judges as a team, not a lot of individuals. You also want to bring a one-sheet project summary. This is a sheet that the judges are going to use to keep all the teams straight. And it's got a few things that need to be on there. A picture of your team, because you want to remind them of who you are. Team logo and number. A really short description of your project, any of the pictures and graphics. I wouldn't load this with 8-point type front and back and expect the judges to read it, because they probably won't. But it's a way of reminding them who you are. If you're going to use video or PowerPoint or anything like that, be sure that you brought a computer that you can plug into OMSI's projector and be able to project it from there. If you want to build models or props or trifold boards or whatever that is, you can go ahead and bring that. You're not required to do any of that, but if it's helpful for explaining your idea, then do that. Okay, and with that, I'd like to bring up Aaron and Mike. There are long-suffering representatives from OMSI. As you can tell, this project's had a lot of attention at very high levels at OMSI. Aaron's Chief Operating Officer at OMSI and has been right in the middle of the mix here trying to make this happen. So, Aaron, Mike, here you go, and I'm going to switch your slides.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. We're really excited to be here. I'm Erin, and am the Chief Operating Officer at OMSI. I've been with OMSI for just under 7 years now. And in my role, I oversee programs, exhibits, and facilities, as well as the implementation of OMSI's strategic plan. And this project, and what we're going to talk about is, is in our strategic plan.
Hey, everybody. My name is Mike, and I am the Assistant Manager of the Teen Science Alliance at OMSI. It's our teen volunteer program. It's pretty awesome. And I'm excited to talk to you all today about what's going on.
So we're going to kind of talk through the OMSI need and the vision that we have, and then specifically a space that we're really contemplating within OMSI, and then some engagement strategies and resources that you could consider as you work on this problem. So how many of you have been to OMSI recently? Okay, fair number, so that's pretty good. As you know, or may not know, OMSI serves about 1 million people per year. And we have a lot of programs that start from 0 all the way through adults. But we have this problem and this challenge of really engaging teens. And what happens is we get families with young kids, they do a lot with the museum, and then when those kids get older and their lives get busier, they find other things to do. And we're really interested in keeping them engaged in the museum all the way through until they're adults. And we have programs that do that, like Teen Science Alliance, like the girls coding class that you heard Autodesk mention earlier. We were really excited to continue in that program, but we have not had a space within the museum or experiences within the museum that have really spoken to and engaged teens. And that's where we are hoping that you can help us. This is a real part of our planning process. This is embedded within OMSI's strategic plan. And our hope really is that you can help design some solutions that we could actually prototype and then implement on the floor at OMSI. So I'll walk you through the space where we're thinking that this could occur and some of the early thinking about that. And then Mike's going to share with you some more specifics about the mezzanine and some of our approaches to making sure that our space design is inclusive and really welcoming for kids from all backgrounds. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. So OMSI's Turbine Hall is the oldest part of the building, and it was donated to OMSI by PGE. And we are reconceiving it as a center for innovation. Our hope is that it really will showcase the really cool innovation that's going on with industry throughout our community and actually throughout the state. And so we also want to take the experiences that have been happening within OMSI's Design Lab and basically flip them out onto the floor. In the Design Lab, we've had the most fun and most success in getting kids to work on design challenges. And that can be anything. I mean, it could be from electronics to, and you'll give some examples, I think. Okay. So in our hope, because of the experience in Design Lab, is that actually, unlike really any other science museum, the content of our exhibits and our experiences would not be static. That it would in fact change based on what's going on in the community, and we would build platforms where the content could change pretty regularly. We think that that's the way of the future. It's about interdisciplinary learning, and it's about getting people really engaged in problem solving, kind of exactly like what you're doing with this competition. The framework that we're thinking about for the Center for Innovation is to have the activities in the hall basically relate to a grand challenge that would be in place for maybe 2 to 3 years. And the first grand challenge that we're working on is how do we create healthy communities? Healthy communities can, involve a lot of things. People talk about smart cities, they talk about measurement, but what we're really interested in are human impacts. So how do we make sure that communities actually allow people to be their best selves and have access to education, healthcare, all of those things that are important. In the actual experience within the Turbine Hall, we're interested in having people see that there's this challenge and then have this grand challenge and then have design challenges within that rotate on about every 6 months basis. And those design challenges could be anything. But we want them to be engaging, and the target age range for these design challenges is about 8 to, I just would say probably about 16. And then that sort of water cube you see in the middle is a representation of this idea of having these really iconic test beds down the center of the hall where people could take things that they've built and actually test them in test beds. And we're not exactly sure. That's a rendering of a weather room. Not sure if we're going to build that, but it's really cool to think about. This is a high-level overview of what the hall could be. It looks more empty in this picture than we ever think it would be in person, but this is just so you can see the kind of structure of the big pieces. And as you can see, there would be, we hope eventually 3 design bays, we're calling them, or areas where people could be working on design challenges within the hall around the perimeter, and then 4 iconic test beds down the center of the hall. That thing that looks like a putting green on the right-hand side is not a putting green. It's actually an early childhood space that we would be building just outside the hall. This is a high-level overview of where things would be located. We believe also that we'll be putting in an interactive scrim that is going to kind of divide the 2 parts of the building. We have a slightly older part and a slightly newer part, and we are working with Michael Curry on designing some high-level ideas for basically kind of a large-scale kinetic sculpture that could go down on the far end of the hall. Not sure of the timing on that, but we did just get a grant to move the planning forward with him, so we're really excited about that. But this overview helps you see this mezzanine space, or that what is termed in this drawing as a reflection space. That's kind of that upper stripe along the top, and that is the mezzanine. It runs the entire length of the Turbine Hall, and that is a space that we are really hoping to focus in this challenge. This just gives you an overview, again, of the relationship between some of those elements I was speaking of. So in this example, maybe under the headline of a grand challenge related to healthy communities, we are talking about water quality and kids or families could build rain collectors, and then they could actually go test them in a weather room. So it's that kind of idea that we want to encourage iteration. We want to encourage 21st century skills like collaboration and creativity, and also hard science skills, but from a variety of disciplines, so it's not just one. With that, I'll turn it over to Mike to talk about the mezzanine.
We're going to dive into the mezzanine. So, again, these images are pretty reflective of what the mezzanine looks like right now. The mezzanine is this long, narrow hallway that we've used for several temporary exhibits that the exhibits team has created. And it's pretty cool. We have the area, I'm going to just walk up to it right here. It's mostly more like a third space hangout. There are some couches along the edge, and there are beautiful views of the Willamette River with these giant windows, and a lot of people come there, and they're like, whoa, this is amazing, and they take pictures. And then the area to the right, this is still the same hallway. We have those walls right there are actually false walls. I learned this like the other day. And there are more windows. And right now we have interactive experiences where people are looking at rainfall and how the water collects with this kinetic sand, which is pretty cool. And if we go to the next slide, you're the DJ right now. Okay. You're the DJ. So we can see more of the space. So right now it's more like a gallery, and we're featuring art that's all about the ocean. And we have pieces from some OMSI employees and volunteers, and it's really reflective of like the community. And another cool aspect is that from the mezzanine, you get this wonderful view of the lower level of the turbine hall. And we've done a lot of activities where you build stuff and you kind of just drop it and see what happens. And so that's, thinking about using the space three-dimensionally, that we have this upper level and then this view of the lower level. I think that's all I want to say about that. And here we go, the map. You can once again see that the mezzanine is this long strip along the turbine hall. I say turbine, some people say turbine. Either way works. But let's talk about some engagement strategies, because that's pretty important. And you should also have these strategies in the LEAP guidelines with links to all the information as well, because I can't really go over all of it because it would take like 36 million hours. But we're looking at Hamago, that's hanging out, messing around, geeking out. EDGE, the exhibit design principles. Yeah, I put in an extra word. Exhibit designs for girls' engagement, and universal design, and third space. Have any of you heard of those terms before? Like, okay, that's cool. It's a learning experience. You probably you have done these things maybe without even realizing it. So let's look at Hamago. DJ Aaron. Oh, okay, it's in a different order. Okay, well, I'll roll with it. We'll go back. So Hamago, hanging out, messing around, geeking out. So we want to have the space in such that you're able to use new media to explore the space and learn from the space, or learn in the space and be in control of what happens in that space. A lot of times, if we look at exhibits, they have a set goal. You have to do this thing, and then this other thing happens. With Hamago, it's more like, do what you want to do and explore and see what happens, and then learn from that using the resources that you have. And that could be challenging for museums, because we tend to think in these like orders, like step 1, step 2, step 3. What else? Exhibit design for girls' engagement. For those of you who have been to OMSI recently, have you checked out the Designing Our World exhibit with like the water stuff, and then like you make things and you put it into the wind tunnel, then it shoots out the top? Yeah? So the whole idea behind that exhibit is addressing a problem in that with engineering, it's pretty much mostly male dominated. And so there was a lot of research done to see how can we get young girls engaged in engineering to fill those gaps. And so that exhibit, one of the main themes that we see, which is important for engaging girls in exhibits, is that the exhibit has to have an altruistic characteristic or property to it. It's not just about solving problems, but it's about solving problems for people, seeing the results. So a lot of those exhibits will say things like, design a way to protect people who live on the coast. And so we see a lot of people engaged, especially girls, trying to figure out ways to protect people on the coast with the little tide thing that we have, and that's pretty cool. And so there are a lot of principles that came out of this research, that the signage for the exhibit has to be whimsical and not so serious. If you've ever been to like a natural history museum, for example, or even certain parts of OMSI, it has like this serious tone to it. We want to make it inviting and engaging when we're thinking about Edge. Another part is that the exhibits have to have a picture of a person so that people can relate to it. There are a lot of exhibits out there that don't have like pictures of people. And that is an important connection, especially for engaging girls in exhibits. And once again, I can't go over everything, but those are like huge points of Edge, is the altruistic part. It's very important. And then universal design. So universal design, sometimes people come to OMSI and they think that it's for kids because the signage might be low or the text is really big and it doesn't really use high-level language to describe science. But those are actually principles from universal design. Universal design includes things like making exhibits accessible to everybody, whether it's knowledge, signage, and space. And the images that we have here are of one of, like, my personal opinion is one of the coolest exhibits that OMSI has ever made. And it is, it's called Human Plus. The details of it don't matter much right now, but if we look down here, this exhibit is the wheelchair. Actually, I should give some more context of the exhibit. I think that makes sense. So Human Plus is all about looking at how we overcome different abilities, and looking at it as a plus and not a minus. I think in the past, people would see things like if you had a prosthetic limb as that you were missing something. But Human Plus turns it the other way around, and we've talked about things like everybody uses prosthetics in one way or another without even realizing it. Like, for example, I wear contact lenses. Without them, I can't see. And I'm seeing glasses on people's faces right now. So that's an example of, you know, something that we use to help us, but we don't think about it as a minus. Or even, everyone here have like cell phone numbers memorized anymore? Maybe just like one or two, like home and like Guardian. But what about like, I don't know, I have OMSI's number memorized, but but using a cell phone to help you like know somebody's number without even knowing it, that's an example of like a prosthetic that we use without thinking about it. So this exhibit is exploring that idea, and not only is it exploring like accessibility, it's a very accessible exhibit. So the exhibit on the lower half of the screen is called Wheelchair DJ. And it featured a DJ who uses a wheelchair, but also uses the wheelchair to control the songs. And guests get to try it out. But if you look, you can see that there's a lot of space between the chair and the screen. It's actually part of the ADA guidelines, the American Disabilities Act, Accessibility, a lot of acronyms. But so there's a certain guideline so that wheelchairs can, people who use wheelchairs can go through. This exhibit actually goes beyond that. There's more than enough space for someone who uses a wheelchair to be able to pass through the exhibit. Another example, if you look at the text, it's really big. Remember we said there's pictures of people? Pictures of people in the exhibit is very important. And that exhibit over there too is pretty cool because it allows you to use your nose to control the mouse on a computer screen. for people who can't use a regular mouse or a keyboard. So we're exposing people to other ways that people do things. And that's all really important. And once again, all of this information is in the guideline, and I'm just scratching the surface for you. What else was there? Oh, third space. Third space. Ooh, that's an important one. Third space. You see these images right here? Who thinks this is a like a super duper fancy lounge? Raise your hand. I think that's a fancy lounge or something. Who thinks it's at OMSI? Is that at OMSI? No, maybe. Who thinks it's at a museum? Is that a museum? Yeah. That's the Natural History Museum at Boulder, Colorado. Hope I'm getting that right. It's at a school, a university, and one of the problems they had is that they weren't engaging the college students that were there. None of the college students were coming into the museum ever. And so what they did is they turned their bio lab, which also OMSI has like a similar thing, the life lab, with all the snakes and the animals and stuff. It's like the coolest lab. But anyway, they transformed their lab into a third space. So things like couches and tables and having access to like getting coffee and stuff. So instead of it being like this rigid like thing where this is where you go to learn about animals, now it's more like, hey, if you want to sit on this comfortable couch, you can do that and hang out. And ever since they did that, they see more and more college students coming into the bio lounge, especially during midterms and finals, so that they can study. So third space, more context. First space is considered home. Second space is work. And maybe for you all, second space is school. So these are spaces in which we have certain roles and authority. But in a third space, those roles usually vanish or go away. And they're mostly used for like hanging out and getting to know people and building communities. So how can we create a space that embodies everything that we just said? Being engaging, accessible, and open-ended, and feel like a third space or like a third home. It's pretty cool challenge. You're on to something awesome.
So this is in the rules, but just to mention, where we're really interested in seeing what's possible is in that entire mezzanine space. It is a very beautiful space, and the windows could be uncovered in your designs. It's more than 2,800 square feet. And in the challenge, you're welcome to either design one experience or to design a whole series of experiences that would be related within that space. Either one would be great. And we generally price exhibits and interactive builds at about $250 a square foot. So as long as you're within that parameter, you're welcome to design as much or just one really awesome experience if you'd like. So with that, Dale, do you want to?
Thank you, guys. This is a lot of work on your part to get this framed so that we can do something with it. I'm going to switch slides here.
Any questions that we can answer? Yes. It really could be either one. So when we think about exhibits, I'd say think about it really broadly. We are really interested in experiences. So the experiences could involve exhibits, or it could involve a third space, or it could involve places where teens might want to engage in technology or do something on social media, or it's pretty broad. You are also welcome, if you have a really cool exhibit idea, to put that forth too. As long as it's within the $250 per square foot, you could either do an experience or you could decide to do a series of experiences for the whole space. Oh, sorry, the question I realized I'm just hearing, we should have repeated it, was that
Okay.
are we asking for a design of the entire space, or are we asking for an individual experience? And it could be either. Yes. So the question was, is there a budget for consumables on top of that? And I would say yes, but please include what it is, you know. And we would hope it would not be too much, but we do have exhibits, and the Designing Our World exhibit that Mike referred to does have consumables. So when we have consumables, what we're really interested in is it something that's so cool that people want to take it home? That's great. Or is it something that they do within the museum, and then is there a way to help prompt people to recycle it, which is kind of tough. Sometimes people don't want to dismantle, most of the time they don't want to dismantle their stuff. But it is something that we try to, you know, be sustainable in what we're doing, so we don't want to generate too much garbage.
Yeah, the bottom line here, correct me if I'm wrong, is to figure out how to engage teens in OMSI over the long haul.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of grand vision stuff that OMSI is attending to because there's a whole vision to this thing. But your primary job, above all others, is how to keep teens coming back to OMSI when normally, historically, they haven't been doing as much.
Exactly, yep. Other questions?
Online,
there's one more.
excuse me one sec.
Okay.
So online folks, you're on a 45-second delay, but if you have a question, go ahead and post it and I'll read it out for you. Just know that it'll be a while before you hear it come back to you. Anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Questions, or as you're working with that, we're happy to answer those.
Yeah, also, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you said before is exhibits that require a person to be there to help it make sense are less exciting than ones that can stand alone. Maybe they're better when a person is there, but they need to be able to stand alone just by themselves. And ones that have expensive consumables, as we talked about before, are less exciting. They better be pretty great if it's got an expensive consumable to it.
Yes, exactly, and durable for our environment. Again, when you think back to that many people coming every year, and while the space will be intended, and you know the experience is intended for teens, we can't keep people out necessarily, and so there will just be a flow of a lot of people, and they do hammer on things pretty hard at OMSI.
Yeah, I was gonna add on that too, is that you will design this experience or exhibit for a certain group, but you know, during the weekday we mostly get school groups, and they tend to be elementary school, middle school, and then on the weekends we have families in the museum. So the demographic changes depending on the day, and then in the summer it changes as well. So thinking like, will this exhibit, although it is intended for one group, will it still be relevant or exciting to other groups?
Yes.
When teens come to the OMSI, when they do their parents generally accompany them, or is it more of a drop-off?
Yeah, when teens visit OMSI, do they come on their own, or is it a drop-off? I'd say that it varies. It all depends on the family, and it all also depends on the individual. So within the Teen Science Alliance program, for example, most of the teens who go come on their own, but we do have a few, like maybe out of 20, I'd say like 5, up to 5 are coming with their parents. Oh, just as guests. Sorry, can you... Oh, okay. So do they come not with a program, not with a tour? I've been at OMSI for 2 years, and I'm there like Wednesday through Saturday. So I do have like this, I'd say it's a narrow window just based on what I've seen, that when teens do come to the museum, it's usually they're part of like an after-school group or a program. A few visit on their own, but I'd say it's pretty rare.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think that it depends on the exhibit that we're hosting at the time, and if it is an exhibit that skews a little bit older, then they will come with their parents. But often what we've seen too is then when they arrive, and if they have younger siblings, then there's not really a space that they could break off and go to.
Are there other questions? So some people have asked, gee, is Team 1540 doing this because you're hosting it and so you had advanced knowledge? And the answer is no, we're not going to take part in any of the prizes. We have a group of students that are pretty excited about doing it for the experience, but they'll be part of the competition, but their standing doesn't affect whether other teams get a prize. We're not going to take any of the prize money out of that. So, there was a Chinese wall between the couple of students and myself that were involved in planning the competition and those taking part in the LEAP experience, and there isn't a mix between the two.
I think there's one more question.
Is there potential to use other parts of the facility, and also maybe comment on time of day usage? I think OMSI closes at a certain time, but is there potential to use that space after closing time?
Great questions. So right now, I think for the purposes of this challenge, we're going to limit it to the mezzanine space that we described. Also because in our master plan, as I mentioned, what we'd really like to come out of this are some ideas we could actually prototype, and that would be probably the place where we could prototype them within the museum. As far as hours, that is something that we are open to discussing, and we generally do close at 5:30, but we have extended hours in the summer, and we do a lot of evening events. So it would not be hard to have the museum open for particular groups in the evening, especially if we already have security and everybody else there. So we would definitely be open to considering extended hours.
And if a team has some amazing idea that involves a mezzanine but some turbine hall space, are you open to that, or is it pretty much exclusively mezzanine?
No, I would say we would absolutely be open to that. So I think you could think about the context of the Center for Innovation. And if it is, as Mike was saying, something kind of amazing, like three-dimensionally, that's from the upper floor to lower floor or whatever, we would be happy to look at it.
Other questions? Online questions, are there any? If you're about to type one, say, wait one before you spend 15 minutes typing your question. Okay, so I've been given the dubious honor of being the point of contact for questions, and so my contact information and all the information that you just heard and some that you didn't get, like the CAD for the mezzanine and such, are all at 1540.org/LEAP, and so that's the main place to go. The rules for the competition are posted there. It's a Google Doc. If we update anything about the rules, like a bunch of questions come in about something that we feel we need to update the rules, then we'll do that, and then we'll send an email out to the contacts that were part of the registration. We really need to know how many teams are actually going to physically do this, and so after this, and probably tomorrow, while you've had a chance to digest this, I'll send an email to all the people that have registered for LEAP, and if you're gonna move forward, please respond yay, and if you're not going to move forward, say no, maybe not, and that way we'll have an idea of how many teams are going to be involved in the judging. The judging might involve another tier if we have so many teams that we have to narrow them down twice. But we're thinking we'll be able to get away with one first 5-minute pitch and then the finalist pitches. But if we have a huge number of teams, we might have an in-between layer. And that's why it's important for us to know how many teams are taking part. So again, you want to make sure that you're at OMSI no later than 4:30, and really 4 o'clock would be nice on Sunday after this coming Sunday. Yeah.
Of the teams that are here, how many of you already have an idea of what you might be thinking about for this? Has anybody got something going on now, or are you looking for an idea? How many teams have an idea of what they wish to do? Okay. How many teams are looking for an idea?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
So if you want to hit up Dave, then you should do that.
I want to mention too, Mike reminded me that you are all welcome to come to OMSI, and we're happy to provide you free admission. And just ask that you wear your T-shirt and check in at guest services, and they know that there will be teams visiting. So I hope you'll come on down if it's been a while since you've been to the museum.
Yeah, teams, if you haven't registered for LEAP, but you're going to take part, you need to go to this website and register so we know you exist and we can be communicating with you and so on.
Are the places that you listed currently open to the public in case we would want to go there and actually have a real world look at it?
Yes,
currently?
they are open.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, another question.
What are the safety guidelines for the space?
Good question. So I believe that those are included in some of the materials that we've provided. But basically, if you follow the universal design guidelines, then those will accommodate most of the safety requirements. We did not layer in the additional safety requirements that we have in a space like ours related to like sprinkler heads and load capacity and all of that stuff. So it is generally a pretty flexible space. It has power. We have a lighting grid that we can move around and things like that. So as long as you follow the universal design guidelines, you're going to be within the bounds of something we could do.
Is it pretty obvious or noted at the site the removable walls where you have other windows available to open?
Yes, when you go up into the upstairs space, you will see these like sort of fabric framed walls against the exterior wall, and each of those covers windows. And if you continue walking down the space, when you get toward the end, you'll see the windows that are not currently covered. So it's pretty obvious because the other side of it is just looking directly down into the exhibit hall. Yeah, it's a good question. So part of it was that we were putting experiences in there that couldn't be against a window. It was that simple. And we also, in the latest exhibit that went up there that was about oceans and ocean health, that included the community art show that Mike mentioned, we needed to construct a gallery. So that's why they're there, but anything can change.
Also, there's a conference room, as I recall, in that space, right?
That's actually on the upper floor, so this will not be related to the conference hall. Some of those windows do look down into labs. So some of them look out of the building, and then some of them look down into the physics lab and the chemistry lab.
Right, but on the mezzanine, aren't there stairs that go up to another conference room, or am I misremembering?
Yes, there are stairs. Yeah, they go up to a conference room that's on the floor above.
But that conference room is off limits for this challenge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, at this point we need to preserve that conference room because we have no space for classes. We completely maxed out all of our classroom space last year, so we're holding on to that one. Yeah.
Any other questions? I'm seeing no online questions, so that just means that we're so awesome that nobody anything. So anyway, I'm the point of contact. My contact information will be there. Ask me questions. I've spent a lot of time with these guys and also a lot of time just in the museum world. But if I can't answer it, then I'll bug them, and we'll get you an answer to any questions. But you've got a lot of flexibility, and I think you guys have done a great job of kind of outlining the parameters of what this challenge is about. They're going to hang around a little bit outside in the hallway if you have any other questions. If not, we're going to call it a day. Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you. We're excited.